And with that, welcome to America's Heroes Group, our roundtable with our partner, Jesse Brown VA Works. June is LGBTQ Pride Month. Today is Saturday, June 10th, 2023. Our host is Kelley. I'm Sean Claiborne, the co-host. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith, and our digital media producer is Ortega of Scouch Honor Productions. And of course, our studio engineer is Sequelae always. Our panelist is here today. That's Dr. Jacqueline Neal. She is the director of the Jesse Brown VA Post-Acute Sequelae of COVID program. A board-certified physician and professor in physical medicine and rehabilitation. And she's known for one of the great things she's done for the VA. Dr. Neal was awarded the Mark Walcott Award in 2022 and formerly known as, in the VA, as the Physician of the Year, the highest honor a clinician can receive in the VA system. Proud to have you today. How you doing?
Hi, I'm happy to be here on this sunny Chicago weekend.
sunny as long as it lasts. As I said, we have two seasons in Chicago: construction and winter, pretty much for the most part. So tell us first of all, what is long COVID? How does long COVID affect someone versus COVID?
That's a great question. Long COVID remains a long-term public health issue, and I believe that's why we're talking about it today. Outside of COVID, there's been a long-established history of all different viruses causing prolonged symptoms, and COVID-19 is demonstrating a similar phenomenon. So the VA defines long COVID as symptoms or conditions that develop or worsen at least 4 weeks after a person was infected with the SARS-CoV-2 virus. That's the virus that causes COVID-19. So symptoms lasting at least 4 weeks. You may hear these conditions called a lot of different things. You may hear it called long COVID or post-acute sequelae of COVID, chronic COVID, post-COVID conditions, long-haul COVID. There's so many different terms because we're still fairly new in learning about this diagnosis and how we treat it. The VA has done a lot of research actually already on this condition, and the question I get asked often is how many veterans are experiencing this. And so what we're seeing from our data is that about 3 to 5% of veterans who come down with COVID-19 will ultimately end up going on to develop long COVID. Some patients have very mild symptoms, but a number of folks develop symptoms that interfere with the ability to attend work or school, to care for loved ones, or even take care of themselves. Another thing to know is what the symptoms are, right? So the common symptoms include deep fatigue or even energy crashing, as some patients call it. Some folks have shortness of breath or dizziness or cognitive problems, but really any organ system can be involved. Luckily, it's appearing that most, but not all, patients have improvement in symptoms over time. And with that, PM&R physicians, that's what I am, treat patients through their recovery journey. So as a specialty, PM&R doctors are investigators, team leaders, problem solvers who identify the root causes of diminished function and perfectly trained to address problems like long COVID. And because of that, PM&R physicians are really trained to see the whole patient and to lead a clinical team focusing not just on the medical condition, but the social and emotional impacts of a health problem.
I think that's really interesting to kind of dig more into that. So I remember a case of a coworker of mine years ago, during the COVID crisis, and he had no symptoms whatsoever of having COVID. He went on a trip and came back, and then he was doing something totally unrelated at the doctor, and they said, you know what, you have COVID. And he was completely shocked. But then, never got sick, never had not even a sniffle. But now he's on dialysis. He has some other issues that they believe was attributed to the COVID, how it affected his body in some kind of weird way. Is that something like long COVID that you described, or is that something different possibly?
That's a really good question. It would be hard to say without knowing all of the specifics of your friend's case. One question I hear that we talk about often is what causes long COVID or who's at higher risk for developing long COVID. We do know if you have more severe symptoms when you're first diagnosed with COVID-19, you have higher likelihood of going on to develop long COVID. But because most of us actually have mild COVID symptoms in the beginning, like your friend, we see more people overall who have long COVID just because there's more of us, right? And symptoms, like we said, have to continue on at least 4 weeks after the diagnosis of acute COVID. And some people have symptoms that get better and worse over time, and so they might feel really good, and then a few weeks later start to feel bad again. And so maybe that's what your friend experienced, but it would be hard to know without knowing all of the details.
So what are the misconceptions about COVID that people have that you see commonly?
So I'm glad you asked this question. What I see on social media is a lot of times where I see what the misconceptions are. And there's a lot of discussion that I've been hearing about folks who have actually not had their symptoms taken seriously by healthcare providers, or who have had symptoms attributed to a mental health problem. So problems such as depression or anxiety can be a common part of long COVID, but it's very clear that the symptoms of long COVID are very real and they're not caused by a mental health condition. So for our listeners, if you are having bothersome, persistent symptoms after COVID-19, it is really important to seek medical treatment. The other misconception I've heard that we talked about a little bit already is that you have to have experienced severe COVID-19, such as requiring a hospital stay or oxygen or a ventilator to get long COVID, and that's also just not true. As we mentioned, the more common scenario is having mild COVID and then going on to develop long COVID. The good news is because the folks who have more severe COVID are more likely to get long COVID, we know that there are some targeted treatments to prevent long COVID. And one of those is getting your COVID vaccine. If you haven't yet, that definitely causes symptoms to be more mild and can reduce your risk of developing long COVID, and making sure to seek treatment for acute COVID when you first get it.
I have a really important question to ask, because this is in the news a lot. We talk about misconceptions, and I hope we can get more clarity on this, because there's been a lot of debate on the use of masks. If they do any good, do they help at all? Hand sanitizer, particularly during the pandemic and then after everybody went back to work and things like that. Is it helpful to wear a mask?
So that's a really good question. I thought you might ask me that today. There is data that shows if you wear a mask, it can help to prevent sharing the virus with others and receiving the virus from others. I definitely suggest if you are feeling ill, for example, that to protect others around you and you're out in public, consider wearing a mask. Here at Jessie Brown, we follow the guidelines provided by the National VA, and that changes over time based on the community transmission rates. And so you might see one VA that has one set of guidelines and another that has a different set of guidelines, but it's all really based on community transmission. So if you're wondering if you should be wearing a mask or if you need to wear a mask when you're coming in to seek care, definitely check out our website, the Jessie Brown VA website, before you come on in to see us.
So why did Jessie Brown establish a long COVID clinic or something specific for long COVID?
Jessie Brown was actually one of the first VAs to establish a long COVID program, and I actually came up with the idea for personal reasons because my father had severe COVID-19 early on, and we struggled to find encompassing medical care to help him with his long-lasting symptoms. We still are struggling. It's very piecemeal. And so through that experience, I realized that there was a need for long COVID care that wraps around the patient and helps them with all of their symptoms. And so I wanted to start that in the VA, and luckily the leadership was so supportive of the idea. So the idea took off. Our program started in January of 2021. It's made up of a whole team of specialists, including myself and some of my colleagues, PM&R doctors, pulmonologists who are lung doctors, cardiologists who are heart doctors, neurologists who specialize in the brain and the nerves, a psychologist, neuropsychologist, and the list just keeps growing. We all work together to provide individualized patient care. And then on top of that, we have meetings where we meet regularly to discuss patient cases as a team so that we can all problem solve together and make sure we're on the same page with developing a treatment plan. So now, since January 2021, we've had nearly 200 referrals. We've graduated a large number of patients from that referral base. And then on top of that, one thing leads to another. So I've become involved in forming the guidance statements of management for long COVID nationally through a group called the American Academy of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation. This group is made up of a multidisciplinary collaborative of specialists where we really bring experts across the country from across medical fields to develop guidance in the care of patients for long COVID. And so I think that's really exciting that Jesse Brown gets to be right on the forefront of helping to develop those guidelines. And then also, Jesse Brown, as a VA representative, I've been involved nationally with the Long COVID Coordination Council, which is a federal interagency group that was formed per President Biden's request to work on plans for managing the effects of long COVID across the country. So it's really exciting that right here in Chicago, we get to be in the center of it all.
I think that's really great that that you guys are taking this seriously, but it makes me concerned in some ways because is COVID something that, long COVID, I should say, something that is deadly perhaps, or is it, what is the danger, at the end of the day, what's the serious danger of long COVID?
So symptoms are very variable. We're not seeing so much mortality per se, though we're seeing quality of life problems, right? If you can't breathe and you have dizziness and you can't think straight, it makes it really hard to function and have a good quality of life. And that's where the public health emergency piece of it comes from, right? If we can't all work together to support our country, go to work, take care of our families, that can really cause problems both for the patients personally, but for our communities.
And is it really important for people to get boosters every year, or if you've had, the first 2 or 3 boosters, are you good to go for a period of time, or how does that work?
So my guess is that the guidance in that area will change over time as we develop new boosters based on how the variants change with acute SARS-CoV-2. So right now, what I would recommend is make sure you follow with your primary care provider if you have one. If you don't have one, please come on by Jesse Brown. We have wonderful primary care providers who will stay up to date on when to recommend the next booster if you need that or not, based on your individual medical conditions.
Would you say that for the most part is a good idea for that to have all the current boosters that are out there? And how many are there out there right now? Are there 3 or are there 4? I've completely lost track.
I know, it's hard to keep track, right? So there's 3 so far if you've been keeping up with all of the boosters. The most recent one came out in the fall of 2022. And it really is going to depend on what medical conditions you have, if you're immunocompromised, if you have other kinds of medical conditions. And so with that, I would really say, if you're not sure, ask your doctor. Your doctor will be able to give you specific information just for you.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say is the most important thing? We have about 3 minutes left. What's the most important thing you want to tell veterans out there about COVID and about your clinic?
I'm so glad you asked me that question. The key point here is that long COVID remains a long-term public health issue, and for this reason, the most important message is to speak up. Please do not suffer in silence. If you're having persistent symptoms, especially if you're struggling with day-to-day activities, please reach out to your healthcare provider to get help. The bottom line is that Jesse Brown has a well-established program to help with a multitude of specialists, including PM&R doctors like myself, to work together to help alleviate your long COVID symptoms.
And also don't forget, let us know, how do we get in contact with Jesse Brown? How do we get a hold of you? How do we get involved with the program?
That's a great question. If you head to our website, you can get a lot of information about long COVID. You can also reach out to your primary care provider who can give you a referral to get plugged in with us.
Appreciate that. Thanks for your time. You gave us a lot of information that was really helpful. And I hope that for at least our veterans out there that we have a better understanding as to the importance of taking COVID seriously. And then and also some of the things that we've seen and heard in social media maybe not as accurate as we hope they would be. We should probably talk to our doctors, reach out to the Jesse Brown VA clinic or your nearest VA clinic anywhere around the country, wherever you are, and get the real information that's specific to your needs. I think that's the message we kind of heard today from a great doctor. Appreciate your time, Dr. Jacqueline Neal. She's the director of the Jesse Brown VA Acute Sequelae of COVID program, board certified physician and professor in physical medicine and rehabilitation. Thank you for your time.
Thanks so much for having me today.
My pleasure.
Have a great day.
You too. This is America's Heroes Group. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Cliff Kelley, Vietnam veteran, co-founder, and host of America's Heroes Group. We have helped hundreds and thousands of veterans find the resources they needed to move on past trauma, find the services they need to heal, find training, jobs, and housing. That's our mission. To support this mission so that we can continue our work and have even more veteran stories of overcoming and success, we need your help. Right now, please consider making a donation to America's Heroes Group. Dig deep and give what you can to support this mission and help those veterans in need. You can donate through Chase Bank's Zelle app by adding America's Heroes Group as a recipient with our phone number 312-804-5831. You can donate through PayPal on our website, americashg.org. From the home page, go to donations, or you can go straight to www.americashg.org/donations. And finally, you can send a check to America's Heroes Group, Inc., 155 North Quaker Drive, Suite 4250, Chicago, Illinois, 60606.
Group this time with a roundtable and a partner at the Chicago Regional Office of Veterans Benefits Administration, the VBA. June is LGBTQ Pride Month. Today is Saturday, June 10th, 2023. Our host is Cliff Kelley. I'm Sean Claiborne, the co-host, Army National Guard veteran. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith. Our digital media producer is Ivan Ortega of Scouts Honor Productions. And we have a panelist with us, Mr. Herbert Morris. He's a U.S. Army Desert Shield Storm Paratrooper, a veteran, and currently serves as the Chief Officer for the Department of Vocational Readiness and Employment, the VR&E. We're going to talk about the Veterans Readiness and Employment Office and things that we have to offer from that part of the world. How are you doing today?
Good afternoon. How are you?
Very, very good. So you were a drill sergeant at Fort Jackson?
Yes, I was. I was a drill sergeant there for a couple of years, yes.
Yeah. What years were you there when you were a drill sergeant?
I was there in 2090 and 91.
You were there it's 1991. That was actually when I was in Fort Jackson. I was in Fort Jackson in 92, and then back in 93. So I was in Fort Jackson in 92, and then back in 93.
Okay.
So yes, you were there when I was there.
Okay.
Yeah, marching up and down Tank Hill.
Up and down Tank Hill every day.
So what do you got to tell us about the VR&E? What's going on with that?
Well, I just want to share all this good information about the Voc Rehab program because it's been good to me. I'm a product of the Voc Rehab program myself. So I just want to share some of that information with other veterans out there. to give them an opportunity just like I did.
Okay.
Because, when I was in the military, I wasn't about education and all that. I was in the 82nd Airborne Division, whore type of guy. I didn't believe in going to school until after I retired. And it's like, okay, what are you going to do now that you're retired? And that's when it dawned on me, hey, you should have been going to school. So I found out about this program in the VA, Voc Rehab, but otherwise known as Chapter 31.
Okay.
And so I participated in this program, luckily, and I was able to get my bachelor's degree in sociology and my master's in vocational rehabilitation. So now I'm giving back, and I'm sharing information with other veterans so they could, participate and get their life together.
So how do you compare what the VR&E does versus the training you get in the military? Because a lot of people who haven't joined the military would think that, well, once you get an occupation from the military, an MOS, that you can come out and you're ready to go right into the workforce. How do you get trained in the military? How does that differ from what you guys offer with the program?
I tell you what, training in the military is totally different. In the military, you have somebody telling you what to do step by step, how to fill out an application step by step, fill this line in block B, block C. Out here in the civilian world, it's a little bit different. You're kind of on your own. But the training that you receive out here is basically training to enable you to go back to work if you have a service-connected disability. That's what the VR&E program is about, is to enable veterans with service-connected disability to go back to work and work in a field that does not affect their disability. That's what the program is about. So if you're a veteran or service member with a service-connected disability that impact your ability to work, Veteran Readiness and Employment Program, formerly known as Vocational Rehabilitation. But there's a stigma behind that name, rehabilitation, so we changed it to Veteran Readiness and Employment. And so what we do is assist veterans in going back to work. And there's different tracks for you to get into if you're following entitled to the program. And I will go over those as we get a little bit further in the program.
Now, when you get some of these different types of training, some people are concerned about getting rehabilitated, even don't want to use that word, because if they do, they feel like they're going to lose benefits. How does that work with the program? Yeah,
the word rehabilitation, there's a stigma behind it. People think about drugs, you think about, some type of psychological issue, so you're being rehabilitated. So a lot of veterans didn't want to participate in the program because of that. So we realized that, and that's why we changed the name to Veteran Readiness and Employment, to kind of attract more veterans to come into the program.
Now, but if you get into the program, do you lose any benefits? Do you lose any monetary benefit? Could that be a consequence if you find gainful employment?
No, you don't lose any benefits at all. This is the whole. Let me explain it to you. First of all, the reason why we do this program, there's a lot of veterans out there that's homeless. There's a lot of veterans out there with disabilities. They cannot work because of their disabilities. So what we do, we train them. We retrain them, gave them a trade, a degree, or something like that to enable them to go to work in a field that will not affect their disability. And once you find work, you don't lose any of your benefits. You maintain whatever your rating decision was, whatever your monthly disability payment that you receive from the government. You don't lose any of that, not at all. Okay. You continue to get that. We just help you to go back to work. That's all that is. It doesn't take any money out your pocket. Okay, and we pay for everything.
So how did you get involved? So you said you came from this program. Can you tell us more about your personal story and what it meant for you?
Okay, yeah, I could tell you my personal story. Basically, what happened, like I said, I didn't go to school while I was in the military. And when I got out, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. And I didn't have the education and skill set other than, leadership, and I was field artillery. There's nothing you could do out here in field artillery besides leadership. So once I found out about the program, I enrolled in the program. And of course, in order to be entitled to this program, you have to have a service-connected disability. So first you have to obtain a rating decision from compensation, and you need a minimum of 10%. So once you enroll in the program, they find you entitled to the program, you have one of 5 tracks that you go into, right? So basically, I got into the long-term training to employment. They sent me to school to obtain a bachelor's degrees in sociology. And after I graduated, or close to graduation, I walked into my counselor's office and I said, I want to do what you do. And she said, well, that's going to require a master's degree. And I just opened my arms and said, hey, I'm ready. So because, I was one of those guys that, I was all in, did everything I was told to do, enrolled timely, I had good grades and everything. So she redeveloped my plan for a master's degree. And I went to school and got my master's degree, graduated, got my first job working in Detroit regional office as a counselor. Then I went back to Oklahoma because Oklahoma is where I graduated or where I retired from, out in the military, out of Fort Sill, Oklahoma. So I went back, worked there for a couple of years, got promoted to assistant veteran readiness and employment officer, and then a couple of years later, I went to Chicago as the division chief for veteran readiness and employment services. So that's my personal story. And I had a great counselor that helped me along the way, because if it wasn't for her, I probably wouldn't be where I'm at right now.
Wow.
So sometimes it depends on the counselor you get. And, so I had a great one. And so I'm very, very blessed for that. So now I'm trying to give back to other veterans and help to guide them and show them the way.
And I've got a feeling just from talking to you, listening to you, and how you express yourself and how passionate you are about this, that you are making an impact on other people's lives, which I think is profound and great, because oftentimes we get our degrees, we get our knowledge, but we don't share it back with the community or help other people that are in our situation. But you're actually doing the exact thing that you should be doing, which is going back to help others and spread that prosperity and spread that knowledge and that that ability to improve yourself. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, this is what it's about. I mean, a couple of days ago, we just had a new employee just hired here at the Chicago regional office. He's a veteran, and usually when we get new employees in, we brief them on our program, different programs within the VA. So I briefed them on Voc Rehab and a veteran readiness and employment program. I briefed the new employees. Come to find out, he's a veteran. One of the new guys, he's a veteran, and he had some questions for me. He said, there's a lot he doesn't know about the VA as far as benefits and how to apply for services and all that. So, I mean, he was amazed by all the information I was giving him about the program. So he called me up yesterday and asked me about, how to apply for services and all that. So I explained all that. He said this is the most information he's ever received about VA benefits, just talking to me. So stuff like that make me feel good to know that I'm helping others and giving back. So I feel pretty good, and I gave him all the instruction on what he needed to do to apply for services, and then if you want to apply for veteran readiness and employment services, what he need to do that. So, yes, it does make me feel good to give back.
And I appreciate you for even saying that, because I feel like oftentimes you have to have, there should be a special degree, like a PhD degree, in just trying to figure out VA benefits. This so they can give them to people, because it's such a myriad of rules and regulations and if, thens, and this and buts and stuff like that you have to follow and get all your paperwork and stuff in order. And it just turns a lot of people off, and a lot of people are intimidated by it. I mean, you got people that run into combat in 5 seconds, but you show them a DD-214 or show them any kind of document that they got to fill out, whatever and stuff, and they'll freak out.
Yes, that's true, because most veterans, I mean, the only application they ever filled out was when they joined the military. They signed all that paperwork, all those documents, and that's it. And they did 20 plus years in the military, never had to fill out an application for a job. So now they're out here. This is a different world, and it doesn't matter that you might have been a sergeant major or whatever in the military. Out here, you got to come out here with the mindset that, hey, I'm like a private. I'm just starting over. You got to change your whole mindset and learn the new process. And a lot of veterans have difficulties adjusting to the civilian world. I'm telling you, it didn't take me a lot of effort to adjust.
Wow.
Because I knew what I had to do. And so I see other people struggling with that, so I try to guide them through that process and let them know, hey, so look, I understand what you did in the military, but this is where you are, and this is what you need to do to move forward.
Now, you mentioned there was 5 different tracks to the program.
Yes.
Tell us about those tracks.
Okay, the first track would be if you found entitled to the program. First of all, you have to, like I said, 10% or more. If you just have 10% disability rating, then the counselor have to find you to have a serious employment handicap, right? If you have 20 or more, you don't have to have a serious employment handicap. So if you found entitled to the program, one of the first tracks that you may qualify for is reemployment track. And a reemployment track, that's basically for veterans that are National Guards that had a job prior to being deployed, and now they're back and they have a disability. So they're having difficulties performing the job that they used to do prior to being deployed. So what we do, we provide them with any type of equipment or assistance that they need to be able to do their job they had before, because the employer may not be able to afford whatever, equipment that this individual may need. So we'll provide them with that. If it's equipment, we'll provide them with information about the law as far as them being able to get their job back after returning from combat. So that's the reemployment track. The next one is the rapid access to employment track. And basically, college is not for everybody. Not everybody wants to go to school. So you may just want to go to work. You just want a job. So if that's the case, we'll put you in rapid access to employment. We'll just provide you or assist you with employment services. But when somebody comes to me and say, hey, I want to go to rapid access track, I don't want to go to school, the first thing I ask them is, what do you have to offer the employer? Do you have a degree? Do you have a certification? Do you have anything like that? If they say no, then I try to encourage them to go to school, learn some type of trade or something, because if that employer decides to lay some folks off, you're probably the first one on the chopping block. So I encourage them to get some type of skill, some type of certification or something like that for that track. Then the other one is the self-employment track. Some veterans just want to, they want to run their own business. So if you're a service member or veteran with a service-connected disability and employment barrier, the self-employment track can help that person to start a business. Now, we don't purchase the equipment, trucks and cars and, we won't pay for everything, but we give them guidance. They have to develop a business plan. We make referral for them to the Small Business Administration. We assist them through that process. We may even provide, short-term education, not a degree or anything like that for the self-employment track, but maybe a couple classes on how to run a business. If you need license or something like that, we'll pay for that. Okay. Then another one is the employment through long-term services. And this is where we send the veteran to school. They authorize up to 48 months of training, up to 48 months. So this could be, just because you authorize up to 48 months doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get all 48. You just get what's required for your training. So it could be just a certification program. It could be a 6 months training. It could be a 2-year degree, 4-year degree, whatever. Right? We pay, and while you're in the long-term employment through long-term service track, we pay for tuition, fees, books, supplies. Veterans shouldn't have to spend a dime out of his pocket. We pay for everything. Your graduation gown, if you need parking while you're on campus, we pay for all of that. And then you get a subsistence allowance while you're in school, and that's based on how many dependents you have. Now, previously, a few years ago, we had a lot of veterans that were going to the post-9/11 versus our Chapter 31 program, and they really needed to be in our program, because with our program, we provide guidance, we provide case management. If you have any type of medical issue that need attention, we make referrals to the hospital, make sure it's taken care of, so you don't have any issues while you're in school. So we provide all of that. The post-9/11 and all, they don't provide any of that. So veterans with disabilities really need to be in our program. So because a lot of them were going to the post-9/11 because they got more money they kind of changed it to where you had an option to choose between getting the regular subsistence allowance or getting the post 9/11, which is an E5 with dependence rate, and you get paid based on the zip code of the training facility.
Okay.
So that's the one that we do the most, long-term training to employment.
But you can't do both. You got to make a choice of whether you get one or the other, right? Before you can't do both. You can either get the GI Bill for post 9/11, or you can do the vocational.
No, you can't. Yes, you cannot use both at the same time. They call that double dipping.
Okay.
You have to use one or the other. So you select how you want to get paid. Do you want to get paid at a regular subsistence allowance rate or the post 9/11 rate? And then that's the rate we pay them.
Okay.
Okay, the last track is independent living track. That's for those veterans whose disability is so severe that they cannot go back to work. They can't work because their disability is so severe. So what we do, we provide assistance to them to enable them to live more independently, and that comes in a variety of ways. It could be anything from a reacher, bottle opener, can opener, raise your toilet seat, widen your doorways, ramps, whatever. Anything that we could do to allow the veteran to live more independently. So those are the 5 tracks within our voc rehab program, our veteran readiness and employment program.
Now, I think I heard something about that last track with the modifications to the house, because I've heard from there was a friend of mine that worked in the VA here in Chicago, and he was mentioning that there was a person who was disabled, a vet that was disabled, and they went in and like redid his whole like basement or something like that because he was wheelchair bound, and they made it so he could like get into his basement, and it was just decked it out, like he made it like it was something that was like out of Star Trek or something like that, the way he described it. But does that sound like that's how far they'll take it? They'll actually do whatever they needs to be done to make your house more.
Not with voc rehab. Voc rehab, we provide service to help you live more independently, and we do it based on needs. Mm-hmm. What you need, not based on what you would like. This would be nice to have, nice to do. We do it based on needs. So if it's going to assist you and you have a need, because we do an evaluation, see what your needs are before we do that.
Okay. Is that a one-time deal? So they go in, do an evaluation, just fix your house up one time, or provide you extra things to help you? Or is it something if you need more things as you get older? Because maybe as you get older, your disabilities get worse. So will they come back?
As your disability, you could always reapply.
Okay.
If your disabilities get worse, for additional assistance. Now, the independent living track doesn't have to be a permanent thing, because maybe at the current time you're not able to work because your disability is so severe, but it may improve. So if your disabilities improve later on, you could always reapply for services, and then we could possibly place you in another track, such as employment through long-term services, so you can get a job and go to work.
Wow.
So it doesn't have to be permanent.
Wow.
Because some of us do improve as far as the health goes. So if that occurs, you could always apply to get training, go to work, and all that.
Wow. And I think that's really important for vets to understand, too, is that I don't see anything that's going to hurt you for trying to get in this program. If you're disabled in any way, shape, or form, at least going through the process of trying to see what you qualify for. Because
there is no negative to it,
right.
Not at all.
You're not going to lose any benefits. Worst they can do is say no. If you get approved for it, you're not going to lose anything you already have. They can only only thing they're going to do is give you more based on what you need.
Yeah, that is it. You don't lose any benefits. Now, there's some veterans that's what they call IU. They have IU, individual unemployability. So basically what they're saying is they cannot work at all. So if you're in our program and you're working, and if you don't have permanent in total, and they go back and do a reevaluation, there's a possibility you may lose something there.
Okay.
Right? So there's no guarantee on that portion of it.
Okay. If you get reevaluated and you're 100%, maybe they find out you're 90%.
Excuse me?
So if you go, you were evaluated at 100%, but then because you do the evaluation, now they find out maybe you're really 80% or 90%, something like that might happen.
It doesn't matter if you're 80 or 90%.
Okay.
You can still work. You can still be 100% and work. There's as long as you're not you don't have individual unemployability. That means you cannot work.
Okay.
Just because you're 100%
okay, I see.
doesn't mean you can't work.
Okay, so if you're in a situation where you're saying you cannot work at all, but they see when they evaluate you that you could do something, you might lose that title that you're actually employable.
Right.
Okay, I see.
And
okay.
some veterans do go to compensation and request individual unemployability, and at the same time they come to Voc Rehab and say, "Hey, I want to go to school because I can work. I want to go to work." And sometimes we may say, based on your disabilities, we don't believe that you can. But sometimes they say, "Yes, I can. I can work," and they'll go to the doctor and they'll get medical documentation to show that they can. But at the same time, they're telling compensation that they cannot work. But we're the same VA, so we do speak to each other. So when you file for IU with compensation, and compensation looking at records and see that you're currently enrolled in VR&E, then they'll reach out to us. "Hey, Mr. Morris, what's going on over there? We have this veteran that just applied for IU, but I see he's in Voc Rehab." So they request the records, and we turn the records over to them, and that assists them in making the determination if they're going to give you the IU or not.
That's good to know. It's very important to know because a lot of people may not think that way, and I think it's so noble that people will, in a situation where they're 100% disabled or certified that they are unable to work, will say, "I want to do something. I don't want to just sit home and just look out the window. I want to do something. I want to learn something. I want to do something. Even if I lose benefits, I'd rather, do something than sit around and do nothing."
Yes, there are veterans like that, definitely.
So what would you like to tell, what's the one thing you'd like to tell veterans that haven't participated in the program that might be able to be in the program? The one thing you want them to know about this program?
What I want them to know about this program is it's not a secret, and it shouldn't be, but this is one of the best opportunities out there for a veteran. Some veterans, they didn't have the opportunity to go to school, or they chose not to go to school, but this is a second chance. You're never too old to go to school. And with this program, we pay for everything. You shouldn't have to spend a dime. We pay for everything. We guide you through the process. We provide case management, assistance. You get a monthly stipend each month to assist you with your bills and all of that. You could also do work study programs to earn a little extra money while you're going through our program. If you need a computer while you're going to school, we'll provide that. We'll pay for all your supplies, equipment. We pay for everything. And once you complete your training, or 120 days before you complete your training, we bring you back in and develop another plan, which is the employment plan. And we turn your case over to an employment coordinator who assists you with finding employment. We work with employers to find you employment. Once you find employment, we monitor you on the job for 60 days to make sure everything is going well. And then we successfully close your case as successful rehabilitation.
Wow. I think that sounds like one of the best programs, not the best program I've heard for veterans, and it's targeted to fix exactly what people need, particularly if you are disabled in any way, 10%, 100%, whatever. So
definitely,
people need to reach out to the Chicago regional office in their area, the Veterans Benefits Administration in their area. Can they go to the VA to get information about this, or to join the program, or sign up for it?
Okay. All they have to do is go to va.gov. You log into va.gov, and you go into education. When you go into education, look for Veteran Readiness and Employment Program. You can get all the information about it, and you could also fill out an application right there online for Veteran Readiness and Employment Program.
Herbert Morris, U.S. Army Desert Shield Servant. We got to sign off the show. Thanks for coming on our show, Mr. Herbert Morris. He's a U.S. Army Desert Shield Storm Paratrooper. He's a veteran trained in artillery, and he is a chief officer for the Department of Vocational Readiness and Employment, the VR&E. Thanks for your time, sir.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. This is America's Heroes Group. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Cliff Kelley, Vietnam veteran, co-founder, and host of America's Heroes Group. We have helped hundreds and thousands of veterans find the resources they needed to move on past trauma, find the services they need to heal, find training, jobs, and housing. That's our mission. To support this mission so that we can continue our work and have even more veteran stories of overcoming and success, we need your help. Right now, please consider making a donation to America's Heroes Group. Dig deep and give what you can to support this mission and help those veterans in need. You can donate through Chase Bank's Zelle app by adding America's Heroes Group as a recipient with our phone number 312-804-5831. You can donate through PayPal on our website, americashg.org. From the home page, go to donations, or you can go straight to www.americashg.org/donations. And finally, you can send a check to America's Heroes Group, Inc., 155 North Quaker Drive, Suite 4250, Chicago, Illinois, 60606.
We have in our Chase bags, we have a care package of hygiene, we have shaving equipment, we have razors, and for the women we have the same personal hygiene items for them as well. And we want to say thank you for their service. This is Chase Bank. Thank you very much.
People in the neighborhood, free haircuts, and service and food. You look good. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service.
Okay. On behalf of Cliff Kelley, America's Heroes Group, we sincerely thank Chase Bank for coming where it matters to help homeless veterans have a hot meal today and a care package. We are sincerely grateful for this partnership. Yes. Yes.
Welcome to America's Heroes Group. Hear your voice where we connect the disconnected intentionally.
Is Cliff Kelley, the governor of talk radio, the icon of radio throughout the world.
Chauncey Spencer II and I, again, share a special relationship. His late great father, Tuskegee Airman Chauncey E. Spencer, took me as a child on my first airplane ride.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is something that people need to see. Often we don't, do the things to show how great our people are. It changes the paradigm of how people think about us, about the collective consciousness of what it means to be us.
And we've been having great conversations about trying to get more African Americans into aviation. And we got a bill that we're trying to get passed that would allow the Pell Grant to be used to help finance aviation education.
This is where I started with this entire conversation by saying, if it were not for America's Heroes Group, I would have given up. So I want to get all my accolades out the way on behalf of America's Heroes Group. Ms. Glenda, thank you. Thank you for encouraging me to press on. I would encourage you all to support this organization. One thing for sure, America's Hero Group is out there. Ms. Glenda will take the time. Ms. Glenda Smith will take the time to listen to you and to steer you in the direction that you need to go.
Thank you for watching another episode of America's Heroes Group, where we provide education about resources and information for our veterans, military, and their family.
And welcome back to America's Heroes Group with our roundtable and our partner, the National Women's Veterans United, NWVU. June is LGBTQ Pride Month. Today is Saturday, June 10, 2023. Our host is Cliff Kelley. I'm Sean Claiborne, the co-host. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith, and our digital media producer is Ivan Ortega of Scouts Honor Productions. And we have Rochelle Crump with us again, our partner. She's a U.S. Army veteran and founder and president of the National Women's Veterans United. How you doing, Rochelle?
I'm doing fine, Sean. Thank you. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. So I did not know, what is Women's Veterans Day? I didn't know they had a Women's Veterans Day. When is that? What is that all about? When is it?
Really? Yeah, it is actually on June the 12th, which is Monday. It is actually created by legislation, and not every state has it. Now, it is this year is the 75th anniversary of the groundbreaking, really, of Women's Armed Services for the Integration Act, which was signed into law by the President, Harry Truman, on June the 12th of 1948. And it also enabled, women to serve as permanent regular members of the Army, the Marine Corps, the Navy, and the Air Force. And so, it's huge for us, pretty much, for those of us who have served in the armed forces, because it gave us the right actually to be called a soldier, to be called, you know what I'm saying, a Marine, because even though we were wearing that uniform, we did not have the same rights as they did with, like as a soldier, pretty much. And so, and then when you look at it, according to the VA, like we're one of the fastest growing demographics in the United States, for military. Yeah, for, we're like 20%. We'll be 20% anyway, they said, by 2045. And so, it's just rolling around because it's male-dominated. We'll never be able to catch up with that number, as far as males are concerned. That's being veterans, that's being in the military, So that's why it's so important for us, to have that day. Now, keep in mind, some women, I heard, that don't necessarily, think it's necessary to say or have a quote-unquote Women Veterans Day. Now, I know that was a very small population because too many of them are doing the work, in different states, trying to make sure that that is legislation that they have in their states. So I think it's a small population that feel that, we just can say we are veterans. Well, it's okay to just say that we are veterans, but look at, the significant part of why it means so much to many of us, and it's more so because of that male domination. And so, when we say we are veterans, and I can give you like some examples, like here it is, 2003, and June the 2nd of 2003, I went for a medical appointment in a VA facility in the clinic. And, they asked me my name, my number, and all this stuff. And then they wanted to know, does Mr. Crump have any insurance? Like I'm bringing in the veteran. You know what I'm saying? And I'm looking at her like she crazy and out of her mind. It was such an insult, and you wonder, my whole thing was, well, how long have you been working here? Because I know you have to, I'm not the first woman veteran that has come in here. Right. So, and then it didn't stop there because Memorial Day, when we were waiting after we had decorated the truck and all that stuff, waiting to pass on, and a guy walks up. I'm talking to three of the other veterans. They were male, I'm female. And he came and he said, thanks for your service, man. Thanks for your service. Gave him DAP and, and stuff like that. He looked at me, now, man, I got all this stuff on me that indicates I'm a veteran, too. And he looked at me and turned the other way. I mean, I was just so insulted, but I didn't let him get away. I said, hey, what about me? And then he's like, oh, my sister, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I apologize for that. I said, that is not enough. I said, this is 2023, and you don't know that women, I go into this educational piece with him, and it's just like on and on. And when does that ever stop? That's the whole thing. We do so much to try to make, it known that women serve this country too. So more education, we have to keep pushing it. I keep telling the women, hey, I don't care if I have on a ball gown, I'm going to put on a hat that says I'm veteran, or I'm going to put some combat boots on, something, because they're going to need to learn this lesson one way or the other, So,
I think it's also important, though, that the people actually understand the struggles that women veterans go through today, because the thing is, when people think about Veterans Day, I think is important because veterans are carrying a lot. It reminds me of that poem. You might have heard that poem, The Things That They Carry. I mean, they're not just the things we carry in our duffel bags. The poem's about the things we carry in our minds and our souls and our spirits, and those experiences that come from, sometimes from combat, from the military experience, from being, God forbid, being a POW. But women have to deal with other stuff on top of that. You got a military sexual trauma that's prevalent in the military. You have sexual harassment. You have job discrimination. You have discrimination and even just trying to make rank in the military. All the stuff you got to deal with being a woman in the military. And
The
we don't
extra
think about
stuff.
that. Nobody even looks at that. And oftentimes, when we go back and look at history, we find that a lot of positive social changes have been invented by the military. Integration came out of the military.
Absolutely.
A lot of the things that how we think of, even a lot, you can even argue that the military starting to even, it was turning the corner, starting leading the way and recognizing the contributions of LGBTQ.
Mm-hmm.
Because the military is saying, wait a minute, there's some value here. We can have people that the military learned that the more diverse your fighting force is, the more ideas and ways you can basically defend yourself against all kinds of different enemies, foreign, domestic, wherever. Because the more ideas and thoughts you have, Native Americans who were used to create codes during World War I, and the Germans could not figure out what these guys were talking about. Nobody could figure them out because it was such an indigenous language that they were able to. The Native Americans were able to help us, keep information private and sensitive because they were writing it in their native language. And sending sensitive information back and forth and helped us win the war.
Absolutely, but you can take it even more to at home and look at the fact that, and nobody looks at this, but just look at the Afghanistan and the Iraq war. If it had not been for women, the number of women that they had in the military at that time, they would have had to go into a draft.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And that's a fact.
Yeah.
So that's always overlooked, and it's always, when you look at even the types of jobs that they learn to do and, master in and everything like that. And then when they come home, even because they are women, they still can't go into those fields because they're blocked out of them because of the male domination and because, of course, they feel that that's a man's job. Mm-hmm. So, it's a lot of that give and take, but it has so much to do with people understanding, all those things that you did, that you said, but more so about what the women did, because they have to be acknowledged one way or the other. And then I understand those people who have children. Their children have to grow up basically to keep that going. You know what I'm saying? And these younger veterans, we're fighting for them. They're going to be the step on our shoulder group. But if we don't fix it for them now, then eventually they're going to lose that battle of even being recognized for any of the things and significant things that they do. So we have an obligation just for our younger veterans to make sure that they are not left out of history, that they are, awarded those benefits that they deserve, that they basically have, some parts within things that they need just even to keep them in well-being, arena. So we have an obligation to do that. And, and we're up to the challenge of that, because we still got a lot of stuff to do and change in policies. And, when we can't change policies and things like that, that's when we don't see money. That's when we don't get the funding for things because there's no policies that goes along with it, to identify all of the needs. And that's what we're actually experiencing now. We see this over and over again, that the people who have these big organizations are the ones who are getting the fundings, and the little people who are doing all the work are getting the crumbs if they get any. Mm-hmm. So, and that's with the veteran organization, because we are one of very few all-women veterans that have an organization, a facility. And so, it's a bypass. We don't really, get the big dollars. But they give them to the American Legion, they give them to the Red Cross, they give them to all those places pretty much that have been here for years where we weren't even invited to the table. Let's just say that.
So do you see a lot of women in the American Legion? That's one thing I never thought about. Do you see a lot of women in the American Legion or the VFWs? The Veterans of Foreign Wars?
Women in the organizations. They're getting their growth of it too. A lot of times what they do is when they first get out of the military, they pay their dues. They give them a year membership. So that's how they get it. But now whether or not they continue on is another thing, because most of them don't. Because one thing is when the younger girls go in there, young ladies go into the facility and they see all these old men, mostly, and then they'll push them over there to the auxiliary, because they just don't fit in there. They don't. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like them sitting in the room with their parents.
Wow.
You get that picture? You know what I'm saying? Now they're going to a place where their parents would be going instead of them going.
So you don't think the VFWs and the American Legions have kind of kept up with the times, as far as being like
no,
modern?
they have not.
And but one thing too, though, you got to think about it though, is that the military population is aging, and that's now, you know what, I got to co-sign on what you just said, because when I talk to guys that are in, like, I have friends that are in the VFW close to where I work, or it's not VFW, it's the American Legion, but the thing is, in that particular place, they even complain about it. All the guys that are coming out of the military from Afghanistan and Iraq right now are not joining. They're trying to do outreach and trying to get these guys to come in, and they're not interested in coming in. They got the bar in there, and they got all kinds of activities in there. They got the First Responders Day, where they're giving out pizza and burgers and hot dogs and stuff, but they're not getting the younger generation. But the military population, and for that as a whole, is aging. The majority of the military population are seniors, because the military force is shrinking. And as it seems, the direction that the military is going into is they're getting more automation. Everything's becoming more robotic, and computers, and press a button, do this and do that. Everything is AI and all this kind of stuff. So there seems to be, and they're up in the ante as to what type of skills that they want from new recruits. You can't just come in there with a high school diploma. It seems like nowadays it's harder and harder to do that. You definitely can't go in there and get a GED.
No. I'm gonna have to disagree with you on that one, because the latest thing that happened was because the retention and the recruitment is down so low that they're accepting them with tattoos, with braids, with, they've really gone like in a mode where so they'd like to take it back to that, because it should, we lost a lot of good standards within the organization, and so one thing that you always took pride in was being different from the population, but that's gone out the window because they need that recruitment.
Wow.
So, when you look at it, it's the same thing for the women. They had their chance to put in what they wanted and stuff like that, but, I looked at what they asked for. They wanted to wear fingernail polish. They wanted to wear lipstick. They wanted to wear long hair, and all this kind of stuff, which was irrelevant in so many ways to, looking at a career. How do we best get to career being officers and making more money? You know what I'm saying? I think that should have been what was on the table. Things like that have some significant, parts for leadership and, being able to pass it on to the next person. What are you passing on to the next person? Oh, you can wear braids now. You can, no. So there's a lot of work to do, and this is where those policies and procedures come in, even in the military, as the standards are shrinking. But we have so much work to do, and we need those finances pretty much to get it done, because we can't just invite people to programs and can't produce programs because we can't afford them. So, as we look at what's in the future for us and more women who are coming out, and you spoke to the fact that, it's getting to be, the population is getting much, much older. How do we look at, bringing in those younger people? They need to be going into leadership roles and things like that, but keep it in mind, you got to do things because they have children. They have small children now also. So it's got to be that kind of friendly facility for them, where they can bring the children, where the activities are surrounding their children, and this is how they strengthen some of the things that they already had in place as well, because even with the American Legion, when they have, like the scholarships and things like that, of course they want those type of things, and they need them. So those are advertising pieces that they can get for the younger veterans to come in also. But more than anything, it's that significant part of understanding what they've gone through and how to best, connect them to those services and give them those tools that they really need. We're starting to do like workshops and things like that with the Red Cross, pretty much, about different mental health issue items that, will help people just in a daily atmosphere to take care of themselves. So, our work is not done. We have a lot of more work to do, And, we thank, America's Heroes Group for giving us the platform to be able to talk about these things because they are so important, So when we get through this day, we always still going to be veterans. So after Veteran Day is over, we still veterans, you know what I'm saying? So you look at those things also, and then what more can we do to help? We have to be able to keep pushing it. We have to keep talking about it, and we got to keep them at the table.
So my question is this: so women are the fastest demographic that are joining the military today.
Yes.
But there's so many things that women have to face joining the military. I mean, I think about this all the time. If I had a daughter, I wouldn't want my daughter necessarily. Me personally, I wouldn't want my daughter unless she really wanted to do it. I have to sit down and tell her, look, you got to be prepared for sexual harassment. You got to be prepared for maybe somebody trying to rape you. People that you were friends with might get drunk one day and do something that might affect you psychologically, whatever, or physically for the long term. There's so many things, and also even the fact that, like what we talked about today, your career advancement. How many opportunities? How easy is it going to be? Are they going to look at your work, your body of work, and are they going to respect that against your peers? Because it is still a male-dominated organization. It is what it is. However,
absolutely.
So why are women joining the military in such strong numbers? Why is it the fastest growing demographic?
I think a lot of it is coming from the fact that they want to go to school, they want to get educated, and taking out grants and all of that kind of stuff to go to school, and that's what they're feeding them right now because they get it for free, and they also learn how to, do different jobs and things like that, which is the best thing in the world when you can get that stuff for free, but
or get paid to do it.
And getting paid, know. So, you look at it, but there's some consequences in it. Hopefully they will resolve those things, And I think it more has to do with, people coming into the military. I don't think there's a lot of learned behavior there in the military. I think a lot of this is coming from the outside. We talked about that before, But, women are targeted anyway.
Right.
Even if you look at today's society, look at all these women that are getting killed, all these younger women being kidnapped and things like that. And if you look at the demographics of it and the size of these people, it seems like they're getting these younger people that are small statured and things like that. You know what I'm saying? So you have to look at all these ways of how we can protect them. So sending them in the military, should be the last place that we should expect that there will be something that happened to them, but it does, and it needs to be fixed, and they have to.
So you guys doing anything on Women's Veterans Day? You guys got anything planned for your organization?
Actually, we did it today. We did it today because we had our meeting today. So we had our little gathering and everything. We released balloons, and we had a great audience over there on Pulaski Road, because it's a busy street, and everybody was cheering us on, We had on our gear and everything, and we had a deep conversation today about why do we think this day is so important, and everyone had something different, even though some, agree with what everyone said. And it's interesting that they all need the acknowledgement of it. Each of them have gone through denial of being, a woman veteran and having to defend it in some kind of way, whether it have been in the hospital and not being recognized as that veteran and or just in the general population out in, in their employment and other places where they have gone, where they've had to challenge it all the time. So, it was extreme that we all felt the same way and how important it is, but we all agreed too that it is up to us to make this go away and to change it and let there not be any doubt about women serving in the military. It's up to us to get this done, and we will. And
Michelle
we will.
Crump, U.S. Army veteran, founder and president of National Women's Veterans United. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And have a good Women's Veterans Day to you and everybody out there that served in the military. This is America's Heroes Group. My pleasure. This is America's Heroes Group. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Cliff Kelley, Vietnam veteran, co-founder, and host of America's Heroes Group. We have helped hundreds and thousands of veterans find the resources they needed to move on past trauma, find the services they need to heal, find training, jobs, and housing. That's our mission. To support this mission so that we can continue our work and have even more veteran stories of overcoming and success, we need your help. Right now, please consider making a donation to America's Heroes Group. Dig deep and give what you can to support this mission and help those veterans in need. You can donate through Chase Bank's Zelle app by adding America's Heroes Group as a recipient with our phone number 312-804-5831. You can donate through PayPal on our website, americashg.org. From the home page, go to donations, or you can go straight to www.americashg.org/donations. And finally, you can send a check to America's Heroes Group, Inc., 155 North Quaker Drive, Suite 4250, Chicago, Illinois, 60606.
And welcome back to America's Heroes Group, this time with a roundtable on our partner, the Veterans Legislative Voice. June is LGBTQ Pride Month. Today is Saturday, June 10, 2023. Our host is Cliff Kelley. I'm Sean Claiborne, the co-host, Army National Guard veteran. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith. Our digital media producer is Ivan Ortega of Scouts Honor Productions. And of course, Jacqueline is our engineer today in the studio. We have a partner with us, Stephanie Collada. She's a U.S. Army Reserve Sergeant First Class. She is a veteran. But also, more importantly, right now, she is the founder and creator of the Veterans Legislative Voice. How you doing?
Hey. Hi, Sean. This is Stephanie. I'm excited to be here, and happy Pride Month, everybody.
Happy Pride Month to you. Now, tell me, what is this discussion about the anti-woke movement in the military? How does it affect the military? First, let's kind of define what we're talking about when we talk about wokeness. I had a brief kind of dive into the information you sent to us about what's going on with legislation and things like that. But tell us more. Take us deeper into this idea. First, tell us what wokeness is to the topic at hand. What is the definition we're dealing with?
Okay, so woke, and actually per Wikipedia, it is the alertness to racial prejudice and discrimination. So generally, woke was used for the Black communities when they are addressing things, especially people understanding the plight that they go through and all the disadvantages because of race. Woke can also be now associated with other things like LGBTQ people and their discriminations and their disadvantages as well.
Okay, so then, so that's a definition of wokeness and woke. So, and that's the thing about it. I appreciate what the Wikipedia definition is, because Wikipedia is a definition that's really created or defined by the masses. So people go on Wikipedia. I've done it myself. Submitted articles of Wikipedia, what's on there today, right now, that are researched, vetted, and then people kind of edit it, and it's like sort of cleanse it. As more people read the definitions, they can argue and kind of change and kind of get to a clearer definition. So this is not just any definition. This is a definition that's created by the masses and also agreed upon and vetted by the masses and all the experts out there and so on from different backgrounds and so on. So that being said, now we're talking about the military. There's an anti-woke agenda, you say, or has been purported in different areas, depending on your viewpoint and so on, because we're talking about something that's subjective. From my perspective, wokeness is kind of a subjective topic or realm that means different things to different people. But then there's also different ways people are anti-woke, and there is definitely a movement against wokeness. We hear it all the time in media and social media, particularly. What is the military's stance on it? What is the message that's kind of permeating through the military?
Well, there is a lot of things that go in between woke and anti-woke, and one of the problems I do see with when people spout out anti-woke like things, they don't understand the actual definition of woke or what goes on with it completely. There is a big anti-woke movement that's been trying to get the military involved, because if you can get it done in the military, a lot of times it can then bleed into the civilian communities. So that's one of the targets that's been on the military's back, unfortunately. And a lot of things that the anti-woke movement has been targeting has been specifically Senator Tuberville, which we've spoken about before. He's been holding up military promotions of very high-ranking personnel because the military will pay for and arrange the travel for service members that become pregnant, and they are by rape, incest, or or they are at a health risk because of their pregnancy, and they're seeking an abortion. That's the portion of anti-wokeism that's been really going on right now with the military. Another form is the support of transgenders and also LGBTQ crowd. I'm not sure how many people remember. It hasn't been that long ago when President Obama had said that transgender people can serve in the military, and there was a lot of things that went into that, different rules, what the military can pay for, the leaves, what have you. And this stirred a lot of controversy and a lot of angry feelings, and by my feeling, it didn't really stir that much of. There wasn't that many stories of gratitude or of the marginalized communities of the transgender people within the military. So I wanted to at least point that out, because that has been a big target on a lot of people's back, especially Representative Chip Roy has been against transgenders serving in the military. They've been the target of the anti-woke movement, and when President Trump was in office, he tried to outlaw transgenders in the military. Many still served openly, but they had a lot more difficulty with all of the other things that go on along it, like the medical transitions.
Now, one thing I wanted to, I don't know if you have any data on this, but one thing I wanted to I was curious about, as a regular, I hate to use the word regular, but as a straight man, as a heterosexual straight man, are there any studies out there to show what the impact of having transgender to LGBTQ people in the military Has there been any studies or any data that shows that there is any negative or positive or indifference as far as their impact on the military life or military mission?
I am not aware of the transgender, but I am aware on the LGBTQ side. There has been at least 2 studies that the military has found, because back when they banned gay and lesbian and also bisexual people in the military, they had said it's a security risk or it's a detriment to the military. When the studies were done, and one of the studies was in the 50s, I believe the other one was in the 70s, they had actually found that they do not pose a security risk to the military, to the units or the mission, and not a detriment on the unit. But the military buried those studies until recently. And the University of Virginia Tech had actually done a symposium many months ago and had spoken about this. I'm pretty sure it's still up on their sites on the history department.
Is it still part of the UCMJ, which is Uniform Code of Military Justice for people that aren't in the military? But the Uniform Code of Military Justice, otherwise known as the UCMJ, actually used to, if not still, outlawed sodomy and had all kinds of very strict and very specific laws about everything from masturbation to anal sex. So is that still in the UCMJ, and is that part of maybe the reason why stuff was buried? Because you're basically saying that that a taboo or something that was illegal is not harmful or not detrimental to the military mission.
Well, it's a tricky subject when you go about legal terms, especially with sodomy. Back when I was a sexual assault response coordinator, we did spend a good amount of time studying this back in training. And one of the biggest things is that for UCMJ and sodomy, it includes acts done with non-human beings. I'm sorry to make anyone uncomfortable. It also includes sodomy when it's rape or sexual assault between a man or a woman as the perpetrator and a man with a tool. I apologize for going in this much.
Yeah,
but for those things, because this happens and still happening with those categories that do fall under sodomy, that's one of the reasons why it's still there. It's become less as a trying to think of a good way to say it. It's been less of a concern of sodomy happening between gay people.
Okay. But to be clear, though, sodomy, it didn't matter what the genders were. I mean, sodomy was sodomy, whether it was a husband and a wife in the military or whether it was two people of the same sex in the military.
Yeah, more people do associate it more with gay people between the genders. But yes, it is the same with all genders.
So what is happening? What are some of the tactics that are being used to undermine or to discriminate or interfere with the lives of people who are LGBTQ?
Well, of course, one of them definitely is the holdup on the military promotions that Senator Tuberville's been having. He's been vocal about other things, but of course, his priorities, that's where he's standing on, even though I'm pretty sure if he had the chance, he probably would jump into the LGBTQ issues that he's been having with the anti-woke movement. Very recently is one of the issues that's been happening for at least the past year has been all of this anger and all these issues surrounding drag shows. And so you haven't
the craziest, goofiest thing. So I guess so Tyler Perry can't do Medea no more. You can't. You gotta hang it up.
I'm trying to say this with a straight face. Thank you. So a year ago at Ramstein Air Force Base, there was actually a drag story hour scheduled for Pride Month in one of the libraries on the children's side, and it was volunteer. And then a lot of people got angry about this because they thought it was inappropriate to children. There's a lot of assumptions from those type of people that that drag people are pedophiles, that they prefer, that they're trying to indoctrinate kids, and things like this. Completely untrue, because the pedophile use, that card has been done really since the 30s and 40s when they try to keep gay men in the closet. That is what they've tried to use to scare people into being afraid or angry about drag, people in drag. And there's been other drag events that had been scheduled at different military bases, a few actually of military members doing their own drag show as their own drag queens.
Well, the thing about it so weird about it is, I mean, because I know they're trying to take it into a level where it's more sexual and more like, but the thing of it is, drag's been around since Shakespeare. I mean, when people do original Elizabethan theater, women were not even allowed to be on stage, so they had guys dressing up as women, and they did. So Queen Ophelia was a guy in a dress in the original Shakespeare plays.
Juliet was a guy in a dress.
Right. You know what I mean? And then so I mean I'm thinking of Corporal Klinger from MASH. You know what I mean? Like, you know, it's all this stuff, all these and nobody thought of it as anything really sexual. I can understand not wanting something that is, you know, like some kind of BD, what do you call it? What do you call the bondage stuff? I forget what they call it. BDSM. Like I can understand like not having something that, you know, presented to children or things along those lines. But there's a clear delineation when we talk about theater and talking about what's on stage. There's certain things that are okay for kids, like Mrs. Doubtfire, and there's certain things that are not okay for kids. like I don't know. I don't even know where to go with that one.
Lady Chablis from Midnight in the Guard of Good and Evil. That's my favorite drag queen, actually. So the other thing is that there's a complete difference between drag story hour and drag shows. Okay. And there's even a difference because there are drag brunches out there that I've seen children go because it is, majority of the time, it is completely appropriate for children. They don't go that far as they would when they can do it in a club of 21 and up. So I do want to point that out for people. If they don't understand or do not know about the drag culture, please just try to look it up on a very objective site and try to understand the differences in the culture. But there was legitimately a hearing to talk about these things with the department, with the defense secretary, and with General, I can never say his name right, but the Joint Chief of Staff. He was also there, and they weren't really aware of the drag shows that, of course, Representative Matt Gaetz has been calling it, although the majority of the events that have caused the ruckus has been drag story hour. And they didn't know any of the numbers. And there's a big accusation that the DOD is using funds to sponsor and run drag shows on military bases.
Which I don't even know. Does the military, besides when you have the Air Force band or the Army band or the actual recognized Army national bands, are there anything that the military ever does that's sponsored by the military that's entertainment wise? I've seen concerts on base and things like that, but I always had the understanding that the military didn't pay them.
They were USO and they were free. They were done it as volunteer time. When I used to have to run a few MWR events, it was hard enough just to try to get popcorn paid for so I can serve that at an event. So I highly doubt that any drag person in drag was paid to do anything on a military installation.
Right. From all I understand, Lieutenant Dan Band, the guy from Gary Sinise, who plays the detective on NCOIS and did Forrest Gump. He has a band and they volunteer. They go on base. Damn Yankees came to Fort Jackson one year. Remember that? And from what I understand, they just we want to serve. I mean, Ted Nugent wanted to do something for the veterans.
Yeah, and it's all free. I mean, when I was on Fort Lewis, we had Seahawks players come in into the MWR Center and also at the PX, the grocery store, the department stores, for those that don't know. They would come there for free and do signatures and pictures. And, of course, the entire place will have, a line around the door. They never got paid for these things. So I highly doubt, and to me, I get so frustrated because we have much more important things to discuss about the military.
But is that the point, though, to make it a distraction so we don't focus on the things that are more important?
Well, it's also something to throw at towards the other side, because this is also coming from the Republicans trying to stir up their base to then point and get some fervor against the Democrats, the other side. because the Democrats are technically in control of the military. So it's one of those things to try to paint a black eye onto the Democrats because they're mismanaging the military in this way. So please don't fall for these tactics. The military is doing just fine. I mean, they suck in some ways, but they're doing okay in others. I always try to take everything as a grain of salt coming from Representative Matt Gaetz or Representative Chip Roy. Chip Roy, for instance, he blamed women as the reason why the military is not doing well, and I can't believe he got reelected.
What does it mean by not doing well?
Because the readiness numbers and the metrics of the military at that time was not doing that great.
But that's kind of counterintuitive because the reason, I mean, if anything, if women didn't join the military, the numbers would be worse because women are the fastest demographic in the military. We just talked about that in our last segment. So if women and people, if you didn't, they're talking about even having to lower the standards to get more men to join because men, and there's a lot of reasons why. I mean, you have to look at the last few conflicts, everything since really the Korean War. It really could go back to World War II. There is a lot of doubt and a lot of questioning about our leadership and their decisions as to when and why to go to war, and what are you going to come back as when you come back home? You might, I mean, back in Korea or in Vietnam, tens of thousands of people were killed. You don't have tens of thousands of people, so these soldiers coming back or service members dying in overseas as much, but they're coming back with missing legs, missing arms. They're coming back with PTSD, and people see that.
Yes, and it's really frustrating. One of the other things is that people tend to point to of women being in the military is because they have to spend so much time trying to fix and prevent military sexual trauma and also adjudicate when those incidents happen, when military sexual violence. So that's one of the things that some do point to, that it's the fault of the women being there. Well, sorry, there's been a lot of MST happening in the military before the women even were there. They just didn't talk about
men
it.
Too, and it does happen against men.
It does, and they're less likely to report it. One of the years that I was studying, only 1% of all men that were estimated to be sexually assaulted actually filed a report. 1%.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's pretty scary when you look about those numbers, and always try to question when people make these big outlandish statements. I try to encourage a lot of people to see through the lines of whatever politicians say. I may point it towards Republicans more, but there are a few Democrats I could probably point out that say pretty terrible things as well. But the Republicans right now, I just got enough ammo.
When I was years ago, and I first thought about the idea, when we started talking about these topics on our show, when I started doing research or reading about this and kind of thinking about it for the first time, my concern was always, and I've been in a unit where those predominantly female. I was in a medical company, 708 Med. It was 70% female because they're medics, mostly field medics and things like that. Nurses, medics, and things like that. I guess we'd call them paramedics in the civilian world, ambulance drivers, things like that. But my takeaway was these were still women. And they still had women ideas. They still had women concerns. They were worried about going to college and becoming good, getting good jobs and doing things in their personal life, being successful as women. They weren't necessarily into grenades and guns and all the macho stuff that that I was interested in per se necessarily, but they were looking at it as a job. They were looking at it as a career opportunity, looking at it as a way to try to improve themselves, based on where their economic situations were and things like that, their education situation, things like that. My concern is that looking at in real world situations, if we had to go to gotten to a major conflict worse than what we saw in Afghanistan or Iraq, maybe something more along the lines of World War II or Vietnam, and we had a predominantly female. But even looking at what happened, how women are treated in a lot of the Arab nations, like in the Middle East. Women are not even considered as oftentimes can't vote. I mean, Sharia law, what's happening in Afghanistan to women right now, putting a woman in that kind of situation, if they got captured, like what would happen to them and how that could be, just a really bad situation. You're getting it on both sides. You're getting harassed from your own soldiers and then have to go and deal with the enemy who's got a whole different mindset about, you know, what you mean and as a value as a human being. So, I always had like a very big concern, and at that time I was engaged with somebody who was in the military as well. A very big concern about what would happen if, you know, they were deployed, and what type of situation it would be in.
The thing is that a lot of times, especially against prisoners of war, it happens no matter what your gender is. Especially for some specific cultures, it actually is a power dominance to perform sodomy on another man as in that type of situation. So actually, it's more likely it could actually happen to men in certain cultures than women. Yes. And I'll just tell you, my first MOS was an ammunition specialist, and I was very excited to blow stuff up, because that was part of the training.
Cool.
So, sure, I was great. I was excited about my career, but I was excited to blow stuff up, too. So, it's not just you.
I appreciate that. I really appreciate it. We're running out of time, so we got maybe about a minute left. So what should people be doing? What would you recommend that veterans do in order to make their congressmen know and understand that focus on like real things? Because to me, woke people, and I hear people on social media throw this word around all the time, and people pro woke, against woke, and everybody's got a whole different perspective of what woke is. And to me, woke always meant, to me, it's just a modern version of black consciousness. That's all it was to me. Because to me, it was it was the same stuff we're talking about in the 90s, the same stuff we're talking about in 2023.
Yes. Yeah. And I would also, I just want to encourage everybody, talk to your representatives and your senators. Tell them what you're concerned about. Tell them and talk to them and ask them questions, whether they're actually doing certain things. Definitely try to tell them about trying to move Senator Tuberville across so that they don't hold up those promotions, because that is hurting military readiness. Sure, majority of those are generals. And so maybe, sure, it probably doesn't hurt it that much, but it can, because it hurts morale. It hurts military readiness on trying to get missions done. A lot of things get held up when those things happen. So contact your representatives and senators, Google them, talk them up, tell them what you're worried about, and try to push them to do certain things. And then if they don't do it, don't vote for them. Vote for the other guy.
Stephanie Collada, thank you for your time.
All right, thank you.
Bravo, Steph. Bravo. She always breaks China, because that's what we do in America's Heroes Group. We connect information and resources to break China. We don't apologize for telling facts. Mm-hmm. Yes. So 4 great shows today, Sean. 4 great shows by a brilliant co-host, Jesse Brown, VA, Chicago Regional Office, Veterans Benefits Administration, the National Women Veterans United, and of course, Veterans Legislative Voice by the best, Steph. So great shows today. So happy to be back. So grateful for this platform. People don't understand that we work sometimes 5 days a week to get ready for this show, because we're constantly corresponding with each other, because we care about the excellence and the integrity of this platform.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot of information to get out.
Yes, that disseminates the resources and information. We're constantly vetting each other. People, it's just a lot, and I'm so grateful for you. I'm so grateful for Ivan. I'm so grateful for Shakira. I'm so grateful I'm grateful for our team, because we work together. We really do. So to Lady Kaya, the best technical producer in WVON, she keeps us balanced. Oh, and OMG, the digital media producer of everything, Ivan Ortega. If you're looking, small businesses, and you need a digital media presence, we highly recommend our digital media producer, Ivan Ortega of Scouts Honor Production. The man is worth everything he does and beyond. So grateful to all of you, all the listening audience, because you make it possible. And we have a special announcement coming up next Saturday. OMG, are we going to be super excited to talk about that? Plus, we're going to celebrate Father's Day next Saturday. We're going to celebrate fathers the same way we celebrate mothers on this show. Yes, we're going to pay honor. So to all of you guys, thank you so much. Have a great weekend. America's Heroes Group.
See you next time.
Uh-huh.